open-minded and progressive. It's a popular place to visit and do business. Just think, in a population of only 800,000 people, you can meet 170 different nationalities.
This area's rich history adds a sparkle that's never far below the surface. During the 17th century, Amsterdam shone especially bright, like gold. This golden age was an extraordinary time. Politics, art, and business all reached new levels of sophistication. Dutch shipbuilders revolutionized sailing. Amsterdam boasted a thriving stock exchange, and painters like Rembrandt and Vermeer produced remarkable art.
Let's take a step back in time, a big step, to the 12th century. To our left, there was nothing but vast stretches of marshland, lakes, and sea. To our right, at the mouth of the Amstel River, was an early settlement of simple huts. Settlers built a dam across the river, hence the name Amstelredamme, or the dam built across the Amstel.
Now, fast forward a few hundred years. Amsterdam has grown into a fortified medieval village, complete with dikes, ditches, and canals to control the sea level. Even this far back in time, it was an important trading hub. Ships sailed back and forth across the Baltic Sea carrying grain, cloth, wood, and salt. The original wall of Amsterdam would have been to our right. During the Middle Ages, a moat, now called a singel, encircled the city. The church you see, the St. Nicholas, was built centuries later. Named after the patron saint of seafarers, it stood overlooking the harbor. Also to our right is the 15th century Schreier's Tower. This outer defense tower got its name from the scare, or sharp corner, formed by the city walls that met here.
Look to the left. Nothing you see, including the land itself, was here during medieval times. Over the centuries, much of the land around us was wrestled from the sea. To reclaim this polder, or land that was once covered by lakes and seas, industrious Amsterdammers built dikes and used windmills and pumps to get rid of unwanted water. And they've done an amazing and ingenious job of it. When it comes to controlling sea levels, the Netherlands takes the lead worldwide.
There are no straight lines in Amsterdam city center, but instead concentric canals lined and crisscrossed by streets, some centuries old. Amsterdam has almost 100 kilometers or 60 miles of canals, even more than Venice.
The city grew up around Times Square, where the Amstel River was dammed in the 13th century, giving Amsterdam its name. In Old Dutch, it means dam built across the Amstel.
Over time, land was reclaimed from the sea, ramparts were raised, and canals were dug as part of an ever-evolving cityscape.
The building with flags atop it is the former Scheepvaarthuis, or shipping house. A group of shipping companies ran their businesses from here. This early 20th century building is considered to be the first true example of the Amsterdam school style of architecture. The front of the building is impressively adorned with statues of Neptune, his wife, and 4 figures that represent the points of the compass. The building is decorated inside and out with all kinds of nautical symbols, anchors, ships, and famous Dutch mariners. It's now a 5-star luxury hotel. now traveling along what was once the outer defense wall of the city. The original city boundary was to the right, to the left, salt marsh and the North Sea. The red brick tower coming up ahead of us is the medieval Montalbaantoren. An ideal lookout for sighting potential invaders, it was built to protect the city's shipyards, wharves, and warehouses from attack. From here, Dutch soldiers armed with longbows, crossbows, and early firearms called arquebuses kept watch over the wide expanses below.
The tower's white spire and clocks were added a century later. They were designed by Hendrik de Keyser, an architect whose work can be seen around Amsterdam, and who you're certain to hear more about on this cruise. The clocks couldn't keep time, and the tower's bells rang out randomly. The locals gave it the nickname Silly Jack.
Not long after the spire and clocks were added, the tower began to list to one side. With some effort, it was pulled to rights. You might be wondering why so many buildings in the city tip to one side or the other. The ground in Amsterdam, a mix of peat, sand, and soil, is very soft. Because of this, buildings were generally designed to be as light as possible. None were very tall, and they often had lots of windows. For stability, they were built on a bed of wooden piles driven as deep as 15 meters, that's 45 feet, into the ground. But if these piles were exposed to the air, they began to rot, and the buildings they supported sank and shifted. Today, water levels in and around the city are carefully controlled to minimize rotting. When new piles are needed, they're made of concrete. Still, you'll see many a house with a sideways tilt.
The Montalbaantoren was a place where sailors gathered before setting out to sea. The journeys were long and difficult, and not everyone returned. Legend has it that the women who loved them also came here to say goodbye, perhaps forever.
We are now on the Oudeschaans, or Outer Trench Canal. During the 16th century, it served as a defense canal. All the city's canals served one or more of these functions, as a transportation route, a line of defense, or a way to manage water levels. The Oudeschaans, because of its size and location, did all of these. Because it was one of the only canals wide enough for large ships to sail, and because of its proximity to the harbor, the Oudeschaans became a convenient place to unload cargo. We're about to pass through one of the city's old locks. The small, tippy black building was once the lockmaster's house. It's now a pub and cafe full of 17th century charm. Stone floors, wooden benches, and exposed ceiling beams. Its outdoor patio is a great place for watching boats on the canal.
We're now approaching the waterways. It's located adjacent to the City Hall, the large red brick buildings. The original waterways was an island built in the 17th century to create a space for Jewish settlers.
While nobles ruled elsewhere in Europe, here in Amsterdam, it was the self-made merchants. During the 17th century, they were earning as much as 700,000 euros a month. That's more than the average rich person earns today. The wealthiest of the wealthy lived here, on the Herrengracht.
Today, almost all of these mansions are used for business, as people can no longer afford to live in them. An exception is the city's mayor, whose official residence is at number 502 Herrengracht. Look for the great facade with white columns just before the bridge.
The golden age of the 17th century was a stellar time for Amsterdam. From politics and the economy to arts and science, everything flourished. And the city was now the most important trade center in Europe. There are many reasons for Amsterdam's astounding success. It had the largest and most progressive shipbuilding industry in Europe. Dutch traders sailed farther than anyone else to newly discovered lands in the Far East and to North and South America. They organized into companies like the Dutch East Indian Company and the Dutch West Indian Company. And the profits from trading staples like grain and exotics, such as spices, porcelain, precious stones, and textiles, were enormous.
Now let's slip back in time to the 17th century. Imagine a colorful scene. Gentlemen in fine clothing on the street, speaking different languages. Elegantly outfitted ladies stepping down into horse-pulled carriages. The clatter of wheels on cobblestone. And dare we mention it? An unpleasant waft of sewage coming from the canal.
Building restrictions limited houses to a width of no more than 6 meters, or 18 feet. But those who could afford got around this by buying 2 adjacent lots and building a double house. Some of these double homes even had 2 different facades. There was no restriction on depth, and with 20 to 40 rooms, a large private garden, and a coach house behind that, mansions often stretched all the way over to the next street.
We're now at the so-called Golden Bend of the Herrengracht, the most lavish section of all. Imagine going into one of these sumptuous homes. On the first floor, an elegant entrance hall with marble floors, high ceilings, and chandeliers. Mirrors were strategically positioned to create an illusion of even more space. And single-lot houses would often have a fake door on the side of the entryway to make them appear bigger than they were.
Rooms were richly decorated with painted wallpaper, oil paintings, fine sculptures, and exotics such as Turkish rugs and Persian silks. In the second half of the 17th century, Parisian furniture, Louis XVI style, was very much in vogue.
As a gentleman, you might join your host in a deep-colored smoking room, A lady? Your hostess would receive you in a light blue salon or tea room. Here, you'd sip imported tea from China while looking out over a beautifully manicured garden. No one ever sat in the gardens. It'd ruin their fashionable white skin. Musical concerts and grand parties were common, and each house had many rooms dedicated to entertaining. For a first-hand glimpse of life inside an opulent canal house, there are two wonderful museums in the area, the Hilding in Lopenhaus and the Willet Holthausen.